I didn't plan to become the guy whose marriage ends because Siri doesn't like silence. I didn't plan to explain to men who move steel at night that my missing buy-in wasn't a stall. But here's the part that kept me up under the ceiling fan, counting slow rotations while my mouth tasted like drywall dust. One sentence can cut deeper than a debt. When my phone echoed her voice across a trailer full of men who hate pauses, the room went weightless. She said it fast, no flinch in the tone, like she was reading a weather alert. I fucked Tyler. The silence afterward felt like desert heat pressed into my ear. I'm Cole, 38, and I rent pumps to oil outfits that don't love paperwork. I move hoses and diesel and rates across Permian spreadsheets, trying to keep the drought of accounting off my back long enough to invoice before the crews move on. My wife then. Mara is 35, a bookkeeper at a car dealer who knows where each dollar's supposed to nap before it sprints. That morning, before the trailer, she told me to leave our house. I told her no. It's my house. Our house. Our house. Our house. The one I painted myself because I didn't trust a stranger to cut the line clean where our white meets the sand-colored wall. I left for work with my boots on and the stupid idea that stubbornness counts as a plan. By noon, I was sitting in a trailer that rattled under a low wind, a coffee ring glued to the formica by sugar, 3 men with sun-punished skin staring at me over contracts they didn't intend to read. They'd paid a deposit, expecting me to deliver pumps and a wink. They also expected me at midnight to nudge them toward a couple palleted coils of abandoned pipe in a yard where the cameras don't work after 9. Competition is a polite word. These guys prefer gravity. They had fronted fuel and a forklift rental. I had promised them I'd match their commitment. To keep it even. To keep a semblance of trust. My phone, face down because I know my own lack of self-control, caught the edge of my knuckles as it buzzed. Siri, you treacherous ghost, started playing a voice note through the tiny speaker like she'd been waiting for the worst possible room. I fucked Tyler. That's all. One sentence and then the clip ended. The trailer air turned into cotton. All 3 men looked at me. One of them, the youngest, let his mouth make a shape like a laugh and swallowed it when the oldest shifted. The oldest scratched his cheek and said, "You with us, or are you headed home to cry on my deposit?" I said I was with them. My voice sounded like it came out of the metal duct over our heads. I stepped outside. Dust moved across the lot in slow curtains. The rigs on the horizon were sticks against a flat sky, the color you get when God forgets to put blue on. I called Mara. She answered on the second ring. No hello. "What are you doing?" I asked. "You didn't go," she said. "I did." "Go where?" "Up forward." After work, the house looked like no one had breathed there all day. The AC had a false smell like someone had wiped the intake with lemon. I set my keys in the bowl and heard how it rang. The sound told the truth. It was 2 keys instead of 1 key and a ring with our name on it. In the sink, 2 wine glasses with lipstick smudges that weren't from last night's dinner. I put my finger in one and felt the greasy trace of a mouth that wasn't mine. There was a plate with crumbs in a pattern you only get when you split something in half and someone takes the bigger half anyway. I went to the bedroom closet where I keep the safe. It's a dumb safe. Fire-rated, good for documents and a wad of cash, code based on the day we closed on the house. Not because I'm sentimental, but because numbers stick to events. I typed the numbers. The door swung, and even before I bent, I knew by the lightness what had happened. The cash stack had a neat space where 20 hundreds had once slept. The envelope with receipts had a couple new creases, like someone had opened it too fast, got surprised by how little there is between a favor and a felony. She had borrowed to fix a tax issue. That's what she'd texted, with quotes. I stared at the missing money and saw my partner's forklift moving across a yard in the dark, the math of fuel plus rental plus the way a man stares when he thinks you might be lying. The buy-in was due at dawn. My gut turned to chalk. The dumb thing about anger is how it makes your hands precise. I took photos of the safe's interior like a claims adjuster. I scrolled my phone with a steady finger while my ears rang. My bank app showed a transfer from our checking midday for the exact amount missing. The note line said, tax. I opened our shared credit card. A new charge pinged at 1012 p.m. a parts store off Front Street. Apple Pay. Initials, MT. I could picture the POS terminal. The dealer where she works installed the same one 6 months ago, and she talked about the rewards points like they were a hobby. I shouldn't have, but I clicked Find My and watched the little orb that is her phone hover near a townhouse on Loop 250 and then drift toward the dealership. The orb stopped in their service bay like it lived there. I hated myself for watching. But what you hate doesn't change what is. The next hour I became a pawn shop tourist. I drove to a shop on the east side with a neon guitar in the window because the owner had once bought 3 chainsaws from me when I changed vendors. I sold 2 impact wrenches and a torque multiplier in a bundle, and the guy counted out 800 like he was doing me a favor. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was moving stock around and joked that I finally learned inventory management. He said, "You lying to me or to yourself, man?" He handed me a receipt, and the paper's weight felt heavier than the cash. I stopped at a second shop near the airport and sold a barely used pump head I shouldn't have had in my truck. I told myself I could call it a demo right off later. I told myself I'd ask forgiveness from myself later. By 9, the desert had taken the sun and given back a light that made everything look like aluminum. I met the trio at a diner whose sign always flickers the U. We didn't order. They slid a key across to me for a yard they knew, and I slid them the envelope, short by 100. The youngest twitched like a dog who hears a whistle. The oldest didn't blink. "You're light," he said. "I'll make it right by morning deliveries," I said. "I'll catch the difference on the invoice." "Invoice," he repeated. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. I added, "The place we're going. One of the cameras has a blind spot between the back fence and the compressor housing. I mapped it. You'll want to set the forks from the south, not the east." He watched my face. "You can't fake the tone you get when your wife trades your savings for an affair. There's a hollow to it." He must have heard it. He tapped the key with a single knuckle. "First truck rolls at 11, he said. "You drive." I nodded. I didn't intend to. My plan, if plan is the word, was born when I scrolled beyond the bank charge and saw a service ticket in our records. The dealership sends automated emails when service closes out on a car attached to your household. We share an account for our Camry because half the time they call me for authorization. At 4117 p.m., there was a service line billed to Tyler W., a tire alignment comped under We Owe, an internal code that means the dealer eats the cost. I had seen Mara type "We Owe" 100 times for angry customers. She knew whose ledger took that hit. It wasn't hers. I drove to the house and parked half a block away. Our neighborhood at night sounds like sprinklers and far dogs, the kind of quiet that makes your brain get loud. I sat with the engine off and my phone screen too bright and watched our porch. At 9032, the Ring doorbell caught a moth and lit up the steps. At 9:47, a shake crossed the side yard toward our back gate with the pace of someone who thinks they aren't seen. The shape had a key. I recognized how Tyler held his shoulders because I'd seen him once in a blurry photo on her office picnic. The backyard motion light hesitated and then committed, spraying color across the boards. He ducked his head like men do when they feel a camera even if they don't know why. I didn't confront him. Not then. It wasn't bravery to wait. It was strategy marinated in fear. I had put an AirTag in the zip pocket of Mara's tote at sunset. I told myself it was because I needed to know where the cash went. I told myself I would have done it if she were a bookie. Lies are a form of lubrication. At 10,013, the AirTag moved. It pinged a small dot on an old map of a self-storage a mile past the loop. Then it pinged farther past the rail spur, past the billboard that advertises a lawyer who looks like a wrestler, until it ended at a chop yard that used to be a muffler shop before the owner discovered you can make better money when you don't ask where metal comes from. I knew the place. Everyone who works near the oil patch knows where the night receives things it shouldn't. My partners had warned me about the owner's brother. He's the kind of man who finds out who your mother is and shows up at her church because someone owes him $100. What I did next is the part I will argue with myself in old age. I called the sheriff's office and asked for a deputy who worked the property crimes loop. His name is Franco, and he hates paperwork like honest men hate wasting time. I'd met him at a yard inspection last spring when an old rig went missing. He gave me his card and told me if I ever wanted to stop pretending not to see things, I should call. I told him I had a location, a timeline, a probable shipment of stolen pipe, and a forklift rental scheduled to lift it. I told him I had a buy-in with men he should keep out of prison if he wanted to know where bigger stock moved. He told me if I was lying to him, he'd make me regret practicing. He told me if I was telling the truth, I might save myself from the kind of debt that follows you into your dreams. He told me to text him the AirTag pings and the time the trucks were expected to roll. He said, "Don't be there when it happens." I said I had to be there because the men I was in with would smell absence. He paused. "Then don't be holding anything when it happens," he said. "Keep your hands where a camera would like them." At 10,508, we rolled out. The youngest drove the forklift on a flatbed with the satisfaction of a kid on a bike. The old man rode shotgun in my truck, not speaking. He had that careful stillness you get with men who have been in violent rooms and don't need to measure themselves anymore. The third guy brought up the rear with a tarp and a coil of ratchet straps that made a high metal song with every bump. The yard was lit with those security bulbs that make people look sick. We used the blind spot like a recipe. The forklift came off whispering diesel. I walked borders, counting like I was on a hunt. I put my hands in my pockets and stared at the camera I knew could see me, and then the one I knew couldn't. The old man pointed once, low and precise. We slid 2 pallets into the dark where the flatbed could eat them. The ratchet straps complained. The sheriff's cruisers didn't come with sirens. They came with the quiet of red and blue bouncing off the corrugated fence. A voice on a PA said something like, "Don't be idiots." The youngest dropped his cigarette and raised both hands. The old man turned his palms up like he was showing a trick. The third guy swore with admiration like the timing impressed him. Deputy Franco stepped through the gap with his flashlight free and his mouth set. He looked at me first. My hands were up and empty. He nodded like a teacher who sees a kid put his homework on the desk. The chop yard owner's brother arrived 7 minutes later in a truck with the kind of paint job that only exists in stories you don't tell in daylight. He shouted about harassment and permits. Franco told him to keep his words to a calm temperature or the night would grow teeth. They cuffed the youngest, not for the forklift, but for a parole violation because the world collects debts in different denominations. The old man went quiet, choosing lawyer over lyric. The third guy smiled at me in a way I didn't like. It said he wanted to know which line I stood on. I wanted to know too. Franco walked me to my truck. "You picked a side?" he asked. "I picked a way out," I said. "You rarely get both." When I got home, the Ring camera had captured a shadow leaving my back door at 11,038. The AirTag had moved to a different pin, then back to the dealer, like nothing had happened. My phone buzzed a text from Mara at 12:11. "You going to move out tonight or in the morning?" I could hear her cadence, even in writing. That dry voice that refuses to pretend she's anything but efficient. I typed a paragraph and deleted it. I typed, "The safe is missing money. You'll transfer it back by noon or I'll bring your 'we owe' to your GM and watch you explain it." The dots came fast. She replied, "Don't threaten me." I replied, "I'm not. I'm forecasting." In the morning, I drove to the dealer and stood in the service hallway where customers pretend to care about brake pad thickness. The glass had fingerprints you only get from people with sunscreen on their hands. I asked to see the service manager, a man who likes to bark and shake, but he remembers. My company buys trucks when we need to, and Oilfield money is allowed. I showed him the "we owe" code on Tyler's alignment. He swallowed wrong. He called for Mara. She walked in like she was moving through water. She avoided my eyes and fixed on the paper. "That's a legitimate comp," she said. Her voice had a small hitch like a flicker on a fluorescent light. The manager looked between us. "You two need my office?" he asked. "No," I said. "She needs 30 seconds to call her bank." He told her to fix whatever needed fixing because he doesn't like the look of trouble when it has a name. She went to her desk, typed, and I got a ping. The money appeared in our account with a note that said, "Return." She came back and folded her arms across her chest. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Yeah, no," I said. Tyler appeared like he was summoned by the word. He had a face that looked like it once won a high school, something, and kept believing it meant the universe owed him good parking. He stood a little behind Mara like the sentence in the voice note. It made the back of my neck get cold. "Do this here?" he asked. His voice wanted to be bigger than the room. "You already did," I said. I turned to the manager who suddenly found a stack of maintenance schedules to shuffle. "This isn't the customer complaint," I said. "It's an internal ledger thing. I don't care what you do with it. I wanted the money back in my house." I looked at Mara and added, "which I will be out of by tonight." On the way out, the parts guy, who always sneaks me discounts on wiper blades, made a face that asked if I was okay. My mouth made a shape that wasn't a smile and wasn't the worst thing I had. At home, I started with the simple things. 2 duffels, jeans, shirts, toiletries, the box of receipts that prove my business is more than the stories people tell when they want to puff. The wedding photo on the bedroom dresser stared with the kind of innocence that makes you want to throw glass. I didn't. I took the photo out of the frame and slid it behind the stack of manuals for appliances we no longer own. My phone rang. It was Franco. Your friends are unhappy, he said. Not with you yet. With their luck. The chopyard brother is making poor choices with his mouth. You need me to do something? I asked. Stay off the map and don't get noble, he said. You did a right thing for a wrong reason. That's fine. Keep your reasons to yourself for a week. I went to a motel that smells like carpet cleaner with something sweet poured in. The clerk took my card and gave me a look that said he believed in whatever lie I put on the desk. I sat on the bed and stared at the pattern in the bedspread that tries not to suggest anything biological. My phone lit up with a voicemail, not a voice note. Different app, different energy. It was from my mother. You all right? She asked the space. She lives 3 hours east and has hands that remember laundry more than love. I didn't call her back. I could not be the man who says the sentence he heard in the trailer. Not to her. Mara texted at 4. I'll be out tonight. You can come get your stuff in the morning. I typed, I already did. I typed again. The safe will get a new code. I typed a third time and didn't send. I can't unhear what I heard. At 6, I drove to the storage where the AirTag had pinged. I didn't go in. I sat across the street and watched a man in a hat pull down a door on unit B12 and lock it. The unit had a sticker for a towing company I recognized. The man in the hat had the set to his shoulders that I had clocked in my yard. He got in a little truck and pulled out like he didn't want to be noticed and also wanted to be admired. I took a photo of the plate and of the building number and sent them to Franco. He sent back a thumbs up emoji and then texted, "Forget you sent me anything." You can spend a whole night chewing the same regret until your jaw hurts. The motel wall AC coughed every hour like a man clearing something deep. I thought about the day we bought the safe, how we joked about criminals, how we said we were the kind of people who would never need it except for tornadoes and wills. I thought about the first time I saw Tyler's name on her phone screen, a notification from a work group chat she never muttered about. I thought about how I had been stepping oddly around a soft spot in the floor for months and only now put my foot through. Morning brought a headache that sat like a hat. I drove to the yard to meet my partners because not showing would be a different species of mistake. The old man leaned against a stack of something that used to be part of a fence. He nodded. The youngest had his hood up like it was cold. The third guy looked at me like he'd been replaying last night and kept getting to the same pause. "You walked clean last night," he said. "I walked with my hands up," I said. "I said." He smirked. "That's not what we asked." "You asked for the best way to get that pipe off the ground," I said. "I gave it to you." The old man watched the dust swirl near our boots. "I once had a dog that looked at me like that when he found a snake," he said quietly. "He wanted to be proud, and he wanted to run." "What happened to the snake?" I asked. "The dog killed it later," he said. He looked at me then. He took his time. He didn't threaten me. He didn't have to. Men like him talk in weather. I waited for the phone call that would make everything simpler by making it worse. It didn't come. Instead, I got an email from our joint mortgage account. An address change had been requested. I called the bank and told them no, it had not, and the woman on the phone asked me to answer a security question I'd forgotten, the name of our first pet. I remembered I didn't have a first pet. She read me the answer typed into the file. It was none. I laughed hard enough to make her ask if I needed help. I texted Mara, "Do not change the address on our mortgage. We need to talk about selling." She replied, "You can buy me out." I replied, "I can't." "You know what the cash looks like because you took it," she replied. "Then you can keep the house and the debt." It was almost kind the way she framed the prison as a gift. Maybe this is the part where I became cheap. I called a realtor who specializes in oilfield moves, the kind of woman who can sell a house while answering 3 other questions about school districts and water pressure. I told her I wanted numbers, fast, and she called me back with a range that made me dizzy. We could walk with modest cash if we didn't cling. I sent the estimate to Mara. She read it. The dots sat. Then she wrote, "I'll need time." I typed, "You used my time already." In the afternoon, I drove to the dealer again. I asked to see their IT guy. Every place has one. Ours is a kid who looks like a Wi-Fi password and drinks energy drinks like water. I told him I had a compliance question. I told him we share a family account for service updates and I needed to make sure the right phones were attached. He pulled up a screen with tiny fonts and a list of devices that had logged into our household profile. 2 iPhones, mine and Mara's, and a third with a nickname, T.W. Chamry. I pointed. "That one yours?" he asked. He had the innocence of someone paid by the hour. "It's our friend Tyler's," I said. "He needed to borrow the car last week." The kid shrugged. "Tell your wife to log him out," he said. "All it takes is a tap." He showed me the tap with his thumb and a sigh of boredom. I stood there and tried not to let my face tell the story of my marriage to a child. I stepped outside and watched a trail of ants try to move a crumb 4 times their size. The metaphor didn't care whether I believed in it. I called Mara. She didn't answer. I called again. On the 4th ring, she picked up and breathed once before words. "What?" she said. "Log him out of our car," I said. "I will," she said. "Then I didn't think you'd even notice." "You left a message in a trailer full of men who don't love pauses," I said. "Since then, I notice everything." She didn't apologize. That almost made sense. Apologies are the polish you apply when you plan to keep the furniture. She told me she'd be out of the house by Friday. She told me she'd take the couch because she bought it with her bonus last year. I told her she could take whatever made her lie less comfortable. Friday night, the house sounded like someone else's. Half the drawers open, the clack of hangers, the thud of boxes you pretend is gentle so the walls don't remember. I sat on the front steps as if I were a neighbor, as if the porch belonged to people I waved at when the weather was right. Mara carried a tote down and set it next to the steps. "I logged him out," she said without looking at me. "Thank you," I said. I meant it and didn't. Tyler idled at the curb in a car with a dented panel he pretended not to see. He didn't get out. He watched me with the curiosity of a raccoon that's gotten used to people. I looked back until he looked away. Mara said, "I used your down payment to buy time. I didn't plan to buy hope." "You could have asked," I said. "You would have said no," she said. "I might have," I said, "but then you would have had to look at me while you did it anyway." She picked up the tote. "You always want the cleaner version of a mess," she said. "It doesn't exist, Cole. The mess is the point." I didn't try to deploy old photos or first dances or the scent of the truck the night we kissed in a Dairy Queen parking lot because the AC broke and the air smelled like sugar and asphalt. Narratives lose their power when the other person has already chosen a different tense. After she left, the house exhaled. I changed the code on the safe to a number that has no anniversary. I put the cash in a bank. I hate because the ATM lobby is always sticky, and hate can be its own kind of memory aid. I took the Ring camera off the back door because I no longer wanted to know who visited my grill when I wasn't home. On Sunday, I met Franco at a diner south of town with a waitress who remembers not names but breakfast orders. He drank coffee like a warning. "The Chop Yard brother is rolling," he said. "He's going to give us something big, and he's going to blame you for making his week uncomfortable. Don't be in places where he might bump into you." "That narrow it down?" I asked. Franco smirked. "Midland's a small place that pretends to be big. You know the bars he likes." "Do I?" "You know the men who know," he said. "Use that knowledge to be somewhere else." He slid a card across with a victim advocate's number. I pushed it back. "I'm not a victim," I said. "You're a person who made a decision," he said. "Decisions come with aftershocks. Let someone tell you the names of the smaller tremors so you don't think you're imagining them." I didn't call, but I put the number in my wallet because insurance isn't belief, it's a habit. The house sold faster than I thought it would. Oilfield money moves even when it's pretending not to. We split the proceeds after the fees and the pain of seeing numbers change without anyone congratulating you. I rented a 1-bedroom that smells like a new start and faintly like whoever lived there before liked onions. The first night, I slept diagonally to prove I could. Work is the thing that kept me from becoming only the story. I showed up to the shop and walked the rows of pumps like soldiers and put my hand on the housings. We had a big rental going out to a crew who didn't like me because they didn't like anyone with a quipboard and a day job. I loaded the trucks. I checked the hoses for nicks. I signed the delivery notes with a pen that always leaks, and I didn't care about the blue smudge on my finger. My partners, they aren't partners anymore, not in the midnight sense, found other channels. So, which axed? The old man called me once and said, "We're square." I said, "We're not friends." He said, "We weren't." I kept the AirTag in a drawer. I don't know why. Maybe because devices are honest about what they do. They don't pretend longing is a setting you can toggle. I took it out once and held it like a coin from a country I don't plan to visit again. Weeks later, a bill arrived, forwarded from the old address. It was for a motel across town. 2 nights, 1 room, 1 king. The invoice had a note in the corner, "Thanks for your business, review us online." It wasn't mine, it wasn't in my name. But the mailing system had decided I needed to see it. My first reaction was heat. My second was something like relief, proof. I scanned it and put it in a folder named Math. I wasn't going to court, we didn't have kids or a custody plan to litigate. But math matters even when no one asks you to show your work. It keeps your head from making myths. One afternoon, late, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo of a car on a lift, a bad tie rod exposed like a bone. The caption said, "Tell Mara to stop comping this." The manager from the dealer had my number after all. I typed back, "We're not that kind of we anymore." He wrote, "She knows." Then, "She's good at her job. She made a bad call." I wrote, "That's two different sentences." He didn't reply. If this is where you expect a grand confrontation, I'm going to disappoint you. There wasn't a public unmasking. There wasn't a scene at a restaurant where glasses shatter and half the room forgets to chew. The thing about private devastation is, it prefers small rooms. It likes the sturdy furniture of a motel bed and the echo of a garage where you wipe your hands on a rag and realize the stain has a shape you will recognize in your sleep. I ran into Tyler once in the toothpaste aisle of a grocery store. No one claims as their favorite. He smiled like we were colleagues in a sport. He said, "No hard feelings?" I looked at his cart. It had 2 frozen dinners and a pack of cheap beer and toothpaste that promises the world. I said, "Hard feelings don't stop your teeth from rotting." He laughed. It wasn't the laugh of a man who wins. It was the laugh of someone who doesn't believe in scorecards, which is its own punishment. Mara texted on a Sunday night a month later. "You were right about the house," she wrote. "Selling was the cleanest move." I typed, "There's no clean, there's only honest." She typed, "You always liked words like that." I typed, "I like sleeping." She didn't answer. That felt like an answer. I wish I could tell you I learned a crisp lesson immediately. I didn't. Healing is not a ladder, it's traffic. Some days I screamed in my truck with the windows up until I got embarrassed of myself. Some days I put my head against the cool of the steering wheel and let my breath be a metronome. Some days I went to the diner and ate an omelet like it owed me nothing and tasted like forgiveness anyway. There is a different kind of evidence than receipts and camera pings and Apple Pay logs. It's the evidence of what you do when no one is watching. I stopped checking her location. I stopped going by the dealer. I stopped rehearsing the speech I never gave. I said yes to a job farther west for a month, a string of rentals that got me out into rigs where the wind slaps you honest and the sun makes everything simple. I slept in a trailer that smelled like my work and woke to the kind of quiet that isn't a threat. Here is the ending people don't applaud because it isn't cinematic. I kept my head. I kept my business. I didn't keep my marriage. I didn't try to salvage a house that had already been moved out of in more important ways than boxes. I stopped pretending that stubbornness is a plan. I put my hands where a camera would like them, and I told the truth to the parts of myself that were listening. I walked away with less money than I had and more peace than I expected to get on sale. Sometimes at night when the AC clicks and the apartment light goes that particular dull, I hear the echo of that voice note in the trailer, the one where everyone stopped moving. I don't hate her voice anymore. I don't bless it either. It's a line in my life, like an invoice paid in full. On the other side of it, the work still needs doing. The pumps still run. The desert remembers nothing. The fan spins. My breath comes in pairs. The story doesn't end with a bang. It ends with me breathing and choosing my own silence. Would you have blown up the midnight deal to keep your hands clean, or played it through for the money and let the law be someone else's job? If you were me, would you fight to keep the house at any cost, or sell fast to buy the kind of quiet you can sleep in? If you want more stories like this, stick around and hit like and subscribe.